and problems that may arise or have arisen yesterday, yet from, bandwidth and so on and so forth. So I have noticed a couple of times that if you're having trouble with your internet, if you'll just go out and come back in, that may be helpful. Also, if you are not speaking, if you would turn your mics to mute and your cameras off. However, as the chair, I would really appreciate it when you are speaking, if you would turn your mic on. Sometimes it's easier if you can see your mouth and your voice, hear your voice. And also it's nice to see everyone's faces. So we're going to start, and we're going to start with 1.1, information recognition of progress, achievements, and improvements. I'm mostly going to have Scott run the informations today, and we'll just keep moving that way. And thank you, Sarah, for running the backup. And let's go ahead and turn it over to Scott. Over.
Sorry about that. Chair Belknap, Deputy Superintendent of Operations, Scott Jones. Item number 1 is just, states right out, recognize progress, achievements, doing great, considering the situation that's going on right now. Staff have really stepped up and, we're continuing to flow funds to the LEAs. Our communication channels are wide open. We keep on top of all the different changes that are coming out, or the guidance that, so to speak, that's coming out from the federal government. So I just wanted to, say how much I appreciate all the effort and work they're doing. Also to our LEAs, our business administrators in the districts and business administrators and officials in the charter schools. Thank you so much for your patience and support. There's nothing we can't handle. We're moving through this really well together. Some of the big lifts coming up, of course, are, we'll cover a lot of this in all the different WebExes that we've got going on right now. But of course, there's the CARES Act funding, the information that we're trying to get from you, or that we're getting by way of the survey that Sarah sent out. Now, that survey did go to your respective superintendents and directors. And Sarah can correct me if I'm wrong, but that's one point of contact. We need just that one point of contact on there. It doesn't mean that you as the business administrator can't fill the survey out or participate in that. In fact, we're just recommending progress-wise that it's a co-joined effort between the respective superintendent, business administrator, charter school director, business official, so that we can get an idea about, just how deep the impacts are on you financially, so that we can go ahead and apply the CARES Act funding when that gets in. Now, just real quick on that. CARES Act funding, likely we won't see it until probably another month from now. Could be sooner. I wouldn't, I'd venture to say it's probably going to be at least a month. Could be a little bit later, maybe, somewhere between 4 to 6 weeks. But again, we're trying to get ahead of the curve here, make sure that we're getting all the information from you, so that when the time comes for us to, fill out the paperwork, so to speak, and get it into the federal government, we're ready. The other thing too is that I just need to be very clear that those first amounts that we provided you is an amount of money that we were calculating. Big emphasis on estimate. Since then, even we've had to make some calculation adjustments. This is a co-joined effort between the financial operations staff and the program managers for Title I. And there was I wouldn't say there were errors. There was just we weren't clear quite yet when we released the survey on just how much Title I money. And one thing we need to focus on too is it's just based on the previous year 2019 Title 1A distributions. We can't include your 1B or 1C distributions. So we're making progress there. We know that's a big effort. Of course, the legislature met yesterday. And I think they are still in session today. I think the House started yesterday. It went over to the Senate. Now I think it's back to the House with everything that they're doing. But anyway, rolling into next week, we'll be able to update you and provide, what impacts are coming out of the legislature. So, Chair Belknap, any, subject to any questions or concerns from Finance Committee members, that includes item number 1. Thanks for the time.
Okay, so Scott, I have a question. I know that what the feds kind of measured this was 2/3 of the amount of money from title money, and I think you said Title One.
Title 1A. Yes,
One
ma'am.
A. Okay, so
Okay.
I have a question on the distribution of that. Will it be the same formula that we use to distribute to the districts? Will it be the same amount?
Yeah, same application of the distribution methodology of Title 1A. Here's the thing with this though, is with the CARES Act funding, they don't have to use the CARES Act funding just now. So I'm just talking about districts here. They don't have to use the CARES Act funding just on their Title I schools. They can disperse that money, once we land exactly on how much that they've got. Because again, right now we're just working on with estimates. Once we land right on precisely what they get, they can spread that out among all of their schools. And then for the charter school, right, individually itself, of course, whatever amount they're eligible for in the end, they obviously, they just keep that in-house or within their own school. Does that answer your question, ma'am?
It does. That's going to be an interesting piece to track and monitor just because it's so different. But I appreciate the insight on that, and some of the questions were answered yesterday in board meeting. Also, Scott, when you're making a presentation, if you wouldn't mind turning your camera on, it's nice to see people as they.
Oh, okay. I thought we were keeping them off.
I think we'll keep them off unless we're presenting.
Yes, ma'am. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. Thank you.
Okay, so let's go on to 1.2, unless anyone else on committee has questions on 1.1. Okay, we'll go on to 1.2. It's discussion on requests for data and information.
Chair Belknap, this is just a perpetual agenda item. USB staff are not aware or have not had any follow. Oh, hang on. Here's my camera. Yeah, see, it takes a minute to go up. Sorry about that. So USB staff have not been tracking any, prior requests. We've satisfied all prior requests by finance committee members for any data and information. However, we do take a pause here or have this particular agenda item in place so that we open it up to you, Chair Belknap, and other members of the committee for any requests for data and information. So subject to those requests, this would conclude item number 2, unless there's any requests from finance committee members.
Michelle or Mark? I still haven't seen Sean come in. I know he was working on it. Okay. Let's go ahead and go on to 1.3. It's an action item, status of USBE carry forward balances and recommended changes or actions. Scott?
Yes, ma'am. So I'll turn this over in a second to Finance Director Deborah Jacobson. We talked about this with the full board yesterday, this being the actions of the legislature to sweep particular balances of carry forward funds. I do want to emphasize what I said yesterday is at the end of state fiscal year 19, we ended that year with, and Deborah can correct me if I'm wrong, with approximately $70 million worth of carry forward balances. Through the efforts of the staff and then the proper approval efforts that we take with you, the finance committee, that ultimately goes into the board, we were able to get that $70 million balance to around $13 million, which, subsequently or consequently, whichever you want to say, as a result of the pandemic and the legislature's desire to, ensure that we had enough funding to make it, to use that funding for state fiscal year 21, in light of the fact that we're still not quite clear on all the income tax revenue because of the extension of the filing deadline into July. What Deborah's going to offer you is the specifics of where or how much that, carry forward balances we sent over or let the legislature know. Other key piece to this is that money is coming back to us, by way of the legislative session right now. And then also it's important to note that, some of the carry forward balances were also those, within the MSP program. So Deborah, just go ahead and correct me or, if I missed something, start out there, but then I'll let them know. And if Sarah, if you'll pull up the backup spreadsheets in there so Deborah can present off that, that would be great. So Deborah, go ahead and take it away. If that's okay, Chair Belknap, I'll turn it over to Deborah.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment because some of these documents are going to be small. If people will go to the left-hand side of their screen, there's and it'll highlight automatically the plus sign or the minus sign. And if you push on the plus sign, and then you can also move the whole document over so it's back in the middle of the screen. You can move it with your hand. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so can you see me? Everything that Scott has said is accurate. I just wanted to say the $70 million that he referred to in the carry forward was just the office budget carry forward. So that's it. It's huge, and I think the staff have made huge leaps and bounds this year in truly obligating these funds and executing them. Because we did get down to 13 million. I'm trying to see the backup documentation on the screen. Yeah, okay, so this is the office. What you see on the screen is the actual office carry forward. The column, the 19 non-lapsing balances, they're in the middle. That is how we actually closed out the year. That being that totals out to be the $70 million. The very next column, that is the amount that we actually released to the LFA as funds that were completely unobligated. And when they asked for unobligated funds, they were anything that was truly not obligated by a contract or a grant. So, and we had about a 24-hour turnaround on this. So, so that's what it is. Yesterday, the bill did pass, is my understanding. It was Senate Bill 3001. Everything that we've marked as being available was taken, but it also is reappropriated. The full amount is reappropriated in 21. So this is the MSP carry forward. Again, the second column is how we actually closed out the year. Down at the bottom, it was a total of $50 million. And what we've marked as available is the $39 million. In this case, the legislature only took $30,600,000, ensuring that we have enough funding to be able to cover any adjustments that we need to make at the end of the year for the LEAs. So with that, does anybody have any questions?
And Chair Belknap, if I may, this is Scott.
Oh yeah, Scott, it's easier just to go unless I say no.
Okay, yes, ma'am. So it is an action item, but we're not necessarily proposing any action items. We, as you know, we provide these updates perpetually on carry forward balances to the Finance Committee, so that we didn't anticipate, of course, this particular situation. If things were, the normal process, so to speak, it's an action item in case you want to move money around. But in this situation, this is probably more informative than it is action oriented. But we appreciate you keeping it as an action item in case there is something that you want to action at this point. But we're not necessarily requesting any actions at this time.
Laura, this is Mark.
Board members, I was going to say, do you have any comments? Thank you, Mark.
Yes. So the SB 3001, it came out of the Senate, and is it going to the House, or where's it land right now? It's not done.
Well, it went to the Senate yesterday, but I only listened to the full House. I didn't hear the Senate. Did it hit the Senate floor yesterday?
Get to the Senate, or?
Yeah, this is my understanding. So it has to have one more iteration. I believe it might be on the House floor. If Angie was here,
maybe at the House floor today.
They tracked the bills. Yeah, I think it's going back to the House today for final. But I mean, Deborah's right. It did pass yesterday, but it hasn't fully passed yet, Chair Huntsman.
So Chair Belknap, could we be updated on that and maybe even have it be part of what Mark puts out as kind of whenever he does his next news thing? I had several people asking on the reporter side about that money. Where is it? Is it coming back? How much? And so it would be nice to know when it
Chair Huntsman, Laura, this is Superintendent Dixon. Can you hear me?
yes.
Yep.
We have people tracking the bill, as Deputy Jones indicated, and we'll just have them update you in real time. So as Jeff and Angie are tracking the bill, well, Deputy Stallings will actually be in committee today, but we'll have Jeff send in real time via email any updates.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments, concerns, committee members? I actually really appreciate this, and it gives you real insight that just having our tax dollars, our taxes come late, how many people that affects in calculations and moving forward. It's a little bit like having businesses closed, how that trickle effect is. So I appreciate that. Deborah, thank you. Okay, so let's move on to 1.4. It's informational. It's the school report card funding plan and per pupil expenditure compliance report.
Ma'am, this is Scott. This one is, yeah, to your point, is informational. So, and by the way, I'm wearing my Utah Schools for the Deaf and the Blind hoodie. Okay, I get that. Sorry for being undressed, but I'm just, proud of what USDB is doing. So wanted to, recognize that. So this particular agenda item, I'll turn it over to Patrick here, is intended to let the board through the finance committee know what the status is. We're required to provide per pupil expenditures on the school report card. Yesterday, you made the motion to, continue funding for the development of the school report card, which is outstanding. Thank you very much for that. Or, the board approved that use of federal mineral lease money. And this is an integral part of it. So Patrick, do you have anything to add, about, what is the status? Are per pupil expenditures accessible and showing up on the school report cards? Over.
Hello, this is Patrick Lee, School Finance Director. So yes, on the per pupil expenditure report card that was completed, I believe, at the end of last month. Utah is one of the states to finish that first. So that information is completed and fully reported at this point. That's about all the info that I have on it at this time to report, though.
Thank you, Patrick. And we also had the opportunity to read the backup, so I appreciate that. Do any board members have questions on this? And Member Newell is on the phone. So does anybody have any questions? Okay, then we will go ahead and move. And
if I may, just real quick, just as a point of information, we have to, with the CARES Act funding, there'll be impacts to, of course, per pupil expenditures in future year reporting. So we'll advise and make sure that we're tracking that with you as well. And then, of course, with the LEAs, just to ensure that we maintain accuracy given this situation now and all the additional funds that are flowing in.
Thank you, Scott. That just brought something to mind for me. I'm just hoping that it's not necessarily on this one, but as information on the CARES Act comes up, if you just keep us posted right along the way instead of waiting, I'd appreciate that. Okay, let's go on to 1.5. Scott, do you want the SRSA and the RLIS programs, program funding reductions by the Department of Education and the impact on the Utah LEAs and schools? It's informational.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am. So I'll just tee it up real quick, but turn it over to Patrick. There was board member concern and some initial LEA concern regarding these particular programs and whether or not funding would continue or not for the LEAs that have in the past or historically received these fundings. So let me turn it over to Patrick at your direction, just to advise everybody in the public, of course, on what the status is with this particular funding.
Hello, Board Member Belknap. So on this particular item, and you all may already be familiar with this, but it's the Rural and Low Income School Program and the Small Rural School Achievement Program. The first program, the RLIS program, is a state allocation. So it does come through the State Board of Education. There's only 2 schools that were involved that receive those allocations. With the SRSA program, that is a district LEA allocation that goes directly from the education department to those LEAs. So in the way that this topic came up was a New York Times article which related an adjustment in how the Department of Education would be qualifying schools for the funding. In the past, the funding was simply based upon, it was the estimates from the Child Nutrition Program. However, in changing that to using the Census Bureau's small area income and poverty estimates, many schools, many states were concerned that that would change the schools that would actually be qualifying for this program. So when we reached out to the LEAs that do receive this funding, the majority are charter schools, about 20 charter schools and 5 districts. The districts are Daggett, Garfield, Grand, Tintic, and Wayne districts. So when we heard back from the districts, most of what we heard back was that they had continued to receive the normal communications that they have regarding the program, the SRSA program, that they had no notifications at this point that there would be a reduction in funding. And so because of that, I did ask them to please keep connected, that if they did receive any communications that the funding was going to be reduced, that we needed to know that immediately. But as of now, the information that we have is that the funding will not be reduced at this point. And my guess is, with the current environment, I doubt that the education department will be making that adjustment at this point. One other issue related to it is that there is supposed to be legislation in Congress that will adjust this rule back to using the Child Nutrition Program estimates as opposed to using the census estimates, which would in effect leave a lot of schools out of the funding mix for receiving these funds in rural areas. And that's all that I have to report at this point.
So Patrick, when would that change take place, or do you have any idea when you're saying there's a discussion on revert?
Question. In trying to find that out, we don't exactly know at this point. There were apparently memos that went out to some states, but it sounds like after they did this, it kind of halted because of the stir that it created. And so to my knowledge, Utah has not received any information that funding would be reduced at this point. My guess is it would be more likely in federal fiscal year 21 that they would try to revisit that as opposed to the current fiscal year. But if Congress does pass legislation to make that adjustment, then there won't be any change to the schools, likely, because they will continue to use the method that they used in the past for funding those schools.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Board members, any questions?
This is Mark.
Mark?
So this is a really good update, and it's a pretty serious concern. I guess it's a question, a question for, excuse me, for Scott. So in all your debriefs and that, I knew this was at risk, but it's still an unknown. I know, and I've only heard from a few of the rural schools, but is this something that we need to communicate out with them, that this is a separate communication, that this is our situational awareness for this situation, and invite them if they get any communications on the federal side that they forward those to us, or do you think this is pretty well communicated out there?
Chair Belknap, to answer Chair Huntsman's question, I think it's to the point, your exact word, it's fairly well communicated. Patrick can correct me if I'm wrong, but he interfaced with the affected LEAs or the potentially affected LEAs so that we would have that mutual understanding of what the situation is and where we're at together on the not only the current funding, but what the future looks like as well. So we'll stay proactive and interactive with them going forward. Is that correct, Patrick? I mean, you talked to the LEAs, right? I don't know if it's you yourself or your staff, but
yes, yes, I did. We emailed out. I talked to a few BAs. They let me know that at this point they had received. There was only one LEA. I would have to check back who that was. They said that the funding amount was slightly reduced, but that could have been based upon the normal calculations that occur with the program, not necessarily related to this rule change with the education department. All the others that I spoke with had confirmed that they received the normal communication of application for the program and to be able to move forward with that. However, it is a significant amount of funding for some schools. In total, for the 25 for the small rural school achievement program for federal fiscal year 19 was $936,000. And so, yeah, just around $1 million for these LEAs. That will definitely add up, and a lot of them, obviously count on that for using different funding to pay for different aspects of what they need.
Patrick, what of our two schools gets the LIS money?
Yes, let me check on that, and I can tell you right now.
And is it a high amount as the others?
Okay, no, it's not. So it's actually San Juan District, and Uinta River High School.
Okay, thank you.
And the amounts for those combined, I believe, for federal fiscal year 19 is $63,280.
Okay, so not that much. Okay, all right. Thank you so much. Board members, any other questions? Okay, then we will go ahead and move on. Thank you, Patrick. Matt, I think you might be in charge of this one too. At 1.6, we're going to talk about the USIMS monthly review, and then also a request by staff to stop modifications and programming of legacy systems. And when I first saw legacy, I thought it was its own system, but I believe that we're talking about systems that are different systems run by districts. Or am I off there, Scott? 1.6.
No, you're not. I mean, it's the legacy systems that previously we said made up the Jenga tower. I mean, Jared, can correct me if I'm wrong on that. So and Chuma's here as well. So if we can turn the time over to them to present at the end of this present. So again, two parts here. I think is my understanding is that the direction of the finance committee, we agreed that. Or staff are to provide this update to you on USIMS on, what amounts to pretty much a quarterly basis. And then, however, today we're also seeking, a recommendation to, for the board to let everyone know that, while we'll continue to, as parallel, for lack of a better term, with the USIMS development, continue to provide and maintain legacy systems, and I'm sure Jared and Chuma can give examples of what we mean by legacy systems, then, we're not going, though, to, invest money or improve those because USIMS is the answer in the future for those. Does that help, Chair Belknap? And if it does, we could turn it over to Jared and Chuma at this point. And
let's go ahead and turn it over. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Just want to make a reminder, if you're presenting, then I need you on. If you're not, to make sure your pictures are off.
Okay. Sarah, I'm assuming that you'll put up the slides. I don't have the ability to do that. I'm Jared Felt. I'm the USBE IT Director. And then on with me, I've got Chuma Uzo. I'll let him introduce himself.
Hello, everyone. I'm Chuma Uzo, USB Assistant IT Director.
And then Judy Peterson.
Yes, I'm Judy Peterson. I'm the USIMS Program Manager.
Okay, so what the slides that you're seeing are the slides that we provide monthly to the Finance Committee, their program management review slides. So Sarah, if you could just jump to slide 3. This is the roadmap. This is dynamic, meaning that it changes based on the information we have at the time, if there's requirements that change. But as of right now, this is the roadmap that we're following. So we are in the educator licensing development phase, and then the ongoing architecture development. Slide 4. This is our quad chart. So we all know the USIMS initiative. This was the bill that was passed last year to provide funding to re-engineer our legacy systems. The status, we're now at a team of 10 USIMS staff, which makes up developers, architects, senior developers, and our program management team. We are in the process of hiring more. Here we've got open positions right now, so that will grow significantly over the next few months. We've completed several foundational development sprints. So sprints are made up of, I believe, Judy, you can correct me if I'm wrong, 2-week cycles where the developers work on requirements and then present that to the customer, meaning the different, like in this case, educator licensing. However, a lot of these sprints now are sprints for the back end infrastructure and not necessarily the front end that the customer would see at this point. We're working on the associate licensing component of educator licensing, and then we have ongoing stakeholder involvement, which Judy runs with, that's made up of LEA stakeholders and internal USBE stakeholders as they develop these different components to USIMS. Right now, we see about 5 different risks that we're highlighting here. Candidate quality. So one thing we found is we're getting a lot of applicants, but the quality is not necessarily up to what we're expecting. So we're working with the vendor, the contract vendor, to see what we can do there to filter out maybe, or if we need to pay more for higher quality candidates. So we're working with them on that. Impact related to coronavirus. So as you know, we're in this quarantine phase, and it does make it difficult in some cases to have that face-to-face interaction that would, benefit the team. But we are working through that. We meet regularly through video conferencing, and Judy's doing a great job involving the stakeholders over the WebEx and video conferencing avenues. We lost, as you know, Travis Rawlings. And as we're working on the educator licensing piece of this, that has taken a little hit, but Malia and the teaching and learning crew has stepped up, and we're meeting with them regularly, Judy and Chuma and the team. So we feel like that won't be a problem. Travis has indicated that he will still be able to help and be part of the stakeholder team. So that's a good sign. But we're just highlighting that there. Stakeholder understanding of agile versus waterfall development. So this is just making sure that all of our stakeholders understand how we develop, in increments. It's not, we don't wait for 3.5 years and then present them with this magic bullet. We involve them every step of the way. And then uncodified organizational policies and draft, word of mouth. So there are some board rules, related to that are now being worked through, related to educator licensing that, we're just waiting on. So that's what that means. We just, before we start developing a system around policies, those need to be well defined. And then on the mitigation side, we have steps in place to mitigate all of those risks. At this point, Chair, if there's any questions, we're happy to take those.
Board members, do you have any questions on the USIMS update? And did you make the request verbally there about just keeping the modifications and supporting and not making?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so we're, as a IT team, we're requesting that we limit any modifications to legacy systems to only those that are necessary by board rule or legislative. And even in those cases, you know, they need to be vetted to make sure that we're not doing nice haves, but need to haves in those legacy systems until we are done with the USIMS development. And Chuma can give a couple of examples if that's okay. Go ahead.
Yes. Hey, thank you guys. So right now we're currently working on educator licensing and pulling those educator licensing capabilities from the Cactus system. As we subsume those capabilities from the Cactus system, we need the Cactus team to aid with the capability transition. So that will be them helping with that capabilities transition going into USIMS, and that will be them also ensuring that whatever USIMS is providing still flows through Cactus, so the other legacy systems can still get fed until all those capabilities are completely decommissioned, and then those other systems can completely get fed from USIMS. So what ends up happening if we have new development? If we have new development, then those Cactus team members have to be pulled off of that aiding with the capabilities in terms of the capabilities transition assistance, and they have to go build these new capabilities. It also impacts future USIMS development. With future USIMS development, if these new capabilities aren't communicated, there could be a chance where something is missed when we're moving over. So the key here is to ensure that the legacy resources are available to aid with the transition to the USIMS system. So as we go on, we get into other legacy systems, they'll have the same, those folks will have the same challenges. And so we're asking for this freeze to ensure that nothing is missed, and to ensure that those people are available to assist with those capabilities transitions, and to make sure that we still are feeding our legacy systems the things they need.
Thank you. Yeah, board members, do you have any questions on this?
Yeah, I'd like to weigh in.
Great.
Thank you so much for the update. I'm excited, and thank you for the graphs. And I think it's such a huge project, so significant to the future of public education, and I really appreciate it. I have one question, and I don't know if this could be shown at all, but I'll go back to, as things are advancing, you know, you have your chart. If you can go to the chart that shows your timeline, you know, first quarter and etc. And I have legislators quite often say, hey, how's that coming? How's it going? How's USIMS? And I'm saying, oh, it's going great. Of course, we have these updates regularly, but in looking at them, I'm curious, and maybe I'm just not studying them enough or doing comparison. Is there any way to inventory the victories as you're having them in here, besides trying to look at a chart and try to figure out where you're ahead of schedule, or well, more so of where you're ahead of schedule, and then maybe even where we're a little bit weak. But I'm just curious more so on the victories, because I know you're having them here and there. So am I missing something when I'm reviewing the charts?
I'll let you take that.
No, you're not missing anything. When you look at the roadmap here, you'll see the different components in terms of, like, we have educator licensing. I think the victories in terms of inventory would be the wholesale decommission of a legacy application. And I don't think I don't think it's hard to inventory that victory. I think as we wholesale decommission legacy applications, we can demonstrate those legacy applications decommission on the chart. For example, if we're 50% into Cactus's capabilities, like educator licensing capabilities, then we can show, hey, this legacy system, we can show you something that just shows that the legacy system is 50% in, and we expect to have this legacy system gone by this time, and that this full capabilities up. There might be a better way to show that, where we can just pool. We could probably do some kind of map of the Jenga tower and then just show components of the Jenga tower being pulled out and put other places.
Wait, Chair Belknap, can I continue?
Yep, just keep going. We're going
Okay,
to
all right. I'll be
discussion.
respectful here. I applaud the work. I think it's fantastic, and you have you got a huge team on this, and I don't want to reinvent the wheel, but I know when you're working with a big team, and maybe those victories are kept internal with the team, but I'd just like to be able to just I can create my own talking points and that, but I would like to be able to give an update to people that are asking, especially the legislature that funded this the way they have and are pretty excited about the progress. And every time they see Deputy Superintendent Scott Jones, they don't see somebody with their hand out asking for money. They see, hey, we've got a system coming, and it's coming fast, and we're working on it. And so they're excited for those results. But I was just looking for a way to inventory some victories that for me. And then if you had something that you're doing with your staff, that would be enough for me. I just couldn't find them in the charts. I just know that we're tracking it aggressively.
Yeah, and that's great feedback. We can start providing that as we go along, so that it's a visual and information that you can pass along.
Yeah, I don't want to create a lot of work or take wind out of your sails as you're moving forward on this, but just if it's available. So thank you.
I don't think that would be hard to do. So thank you.
So Jared, I have another question, and it's actually on like our educator licensing. How are we doing? Are we on track? I mean, because of the virus, we're a little bit behind, but are we going to have a collision when we start school next year? Are the two trains running into each other?
So right now we have a lot of meetings going on with teaching and learning. Malia, the new person that took Travis's place, and we are changing some of the requirements, some of the needs to have that they are finding that we need to include in this. We call it a minimal viable product that was going to be released in July. So there are some changes that we're working through with them that we had planned, that we had not planned for, but I'm confident that we'll be successful there. We are, when school starts or their Cactus rollover, we're still going to have to utilize the old legacy system until we fully decommission that with the different modules that are features that are in Cactus. But I don't see any problems right now, other than just making sure that everybody is on the same page when we're rolling these out, and that we include everything that they need. Juma, do you have anything to add there?
Yeah, as Jared stated, we're currently working with the teaching and learning team, the TNL team right now on this. They did bring some changes and some thoughts with respect to what they needed by July 1st. So we're evaluating that with them. We actually have a meeting Monday with them to iron all that out. So we'll address any collisions then, if there seem to be any collisions then. But
Right.
the COVID's not helpful. The COVID has, I believe the COVID has brought up some things, has presented some factors that that have changed the way we do business. Of course, I know there's some requests in terms of leaving licensing open until October 1st and some other things. And I think those are some things that weren't planned for. And those are things that we'll address with the team on Monday, so we can make sure that we're fully successful.
Thank you. And I could be off base here, but Chuma, are you famous now in a commercial?
I am in a commercial.
Let's say several commercials.
So I just wanted to see what changed because of the virus. Just kidding.
No, I'm not an actor, but I was in a commercial.
Okay. Any other questions from committee members? All right, then I will be seeking a motion. Sarah, can you pull up the proposed motion? Is there a way to do that, Sarah? Thank you. I'm seeking a motion.
Hey, I'll dive in. Okay. I'll make a motion that committee recommend the board direct staff that modifications to and or programming of legacy systems cease unless required by law or USB rule in order to ensure maximum focus on and resources to the USIMS project.
Thank you. Any questions, committee members? Okay, we'll do a roll call vote. Member Bolter? I haven't seen her mic come off yet. Member Bolter?
Sorry, I'm on my phone, but also on the video. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm a yes.
Thank you. Chair Huntsman?
Yes.
Member Newell?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you so much, Judy, Chuma, and Jared. And let's go on to 1.7. Let me get my camera back on. I just think it's nice to see people. I so appreciate you being willing to do that. Okay, 1.7 is common education data standards, or SEDSs, and update and review and approval of data elements. Scott, is this coming to you or is this coming to Aaron?
Chair Belknap, this is Aaron. So if you defer to him for the presentation, please.
Okay. And Aaron, we're mostly just talking and answering without having to go back to me every single time. So go ahead.
Absolutely. And if Sarah, if you can pull up the backup document, we'll just take a look at that. This is a fairly detailed, but again, at the same time, we'll just be talking through a high level of the information I'm giving to you. You can go through and read the backup if you haven't already done so. And so part of the work that we're doing in basically lining up with the USIMS is making sure that our information that we have historically on the students, on the teachers, on their assessments, on graduation, everything will flow into the new system. And I'm also utilizing basically nationally recognized standards that are coming out, common educational data standards. If you have a chance, I recommend going and just typing in CEDS in your website and looking through that, and you can actually go into a dynamic site and run through all this information, take a look at all of the domains and the elements inside of there. There's a lot behind this. Again, this is a PK12 20, meaning, sorry, PK20 W, which basically means it goes from the early learning from birth basically all the way through workforce services and such. Obviously, we're not focused on things outside of our domain. We are looking primarily at the K-12 or just the elementary and secondary education components. And we're looking at the assessment domains inside of there. So those are the primary areas that we're looking at. And really what this does is this is a standard. We're not putting data into the system and all, what we're doing is we're lining up, or we're mapping. This is our information. This is what it means to us, and then going through and doing a process called align, where we sit through each and eventually every data element we have in our databases, and lining it up to the standard that we can find in inside of the said standardization. So if you go to the next page, Sarah, just kind of explain the concept of how they put everything together. They have basically the three main areas where they have the organization, they have a person, and then you have your learning process, and then an individual. So for example, a person could be a teacher, could be a student, could be a principal, could be a superintendent. It all depends upon the time component inside of there. And that person then is connected to the organization. So as a person could be a student at one time, and so that role connection is inside of there, but later on that person could, for example, go up to university, get a teaching degree, come back and become a teacher. So that person entity stays the same, but the role and the association with the organization obviously changes over time. And then you have the learning process that's involved inside of there. That's the assessments, that is the inputs, and if you will, the outputs that we can start looking at. And so the whole process of adopting the standardization in this model is, one, to make sure that one, we don't lose any of our legacy information, so we can continue on to say this is exactly what we have, map it through, and make sure it's inside or it's connected within the USIMS application and all that's entailed inside of there. And at the same time, it also allows us to optimize some tools that are outside in the SEDS toolbox. For example, one of them that we're quite excited about that we're moving for is the thing called I forgot the name. I believe it's called Create, but that's not correct. Anyway, basically what it does is allow us to say, here's all our data. We basically will push the button when we're complete, if everything's lined up correctly, and then it goes out and it generates. There's the word. Sorry, the system's called Generate. It creates our EdFacts data files and lets us submit those up to the federal government. So it's a great resource. So what happened is back in about December, we've been talking quite a bit about the CDSM elements, talking with counterparts in other states, obviously amongst ourselves. Okay, is this the best model? We like what we see inside of here. And then back in December, Scott directed us to start getting things aligned. We have started with the student enrollment components, all that's involved behind that. And then we've been looking at the school components. We've uploaded that information into the CDS website, and we're in the process of lining those over, which gives you then this master data dictionary that really it's available for anyone in the public to go in and look at. It's a little buried. Maybe another time if someone from on the board is interested in going in and looking at the elements that we have and what it's aligned to, we're happy to show you that information. Again, it's not complete. So we've been working on those, and then about a month ago we started on the assessment components and saying, okay, this is the process that we're going to start working through to align it. It's not a direct, one-to-one translation on a lot of the elements, because the concepts, the foundational concepts, if you will, between the data that were homegrown here in Utah over the past 20, 30 years, don't necessarily line up perfectly. And so there's, a lot of research and detail that we have to go into, but that's the process that we're going through. And coming to the board, we're just letting you know, this is where we're at. Again, we've got the enrollment components inside of there. We have the school information, basically the institution names, their addresses, the current principals, or directors or whoever is inside of the schools. And then we're looking at the school year, where we say, what kind of programs are the schools running through? Are they Title I? Are they Title III? different elements like that. Those are all inside of the Common Education Data Standards site right now. Our elements are mapped up to it. And we're in the process of then lining them up with the Common Education Data Standards. And like I just said, we are just starting the assessment component behind that. So again, ultimately the task is everything in our database that we need to retain and have to move forward has to be aligned through this process. The benefit at the end is we will have a very good data dictionary available for anyone in the public to come take a look at. It doesn't mean that, so for example, if the SEDS say, hey, this is what, for example, social emotional learning is, or biometric data, just because the definition exists in SEDS doesn't mean we have that data element. It just means that there is a definition that has been adopted by basically a group of all the states are working together on saying that's what it means, and we're able to communicate back and forth and ultimately start sharing research, start sharing different models of how we approach it. And again, obviously have the generate tool at the end, which then will help alleviate a lot of the work that we're doing right now of just getting information up reported to the federal government. So any questions or things I can answer on this?
Board members, do you have any questions for Aaron? Okay, it doesn't look like it. So here is the recommended.
Sorry,
Oh, Michelle, go ahead.
yeah, sorry, I have to unmute in 2 places.
Okay.
Anyway, so in order for this to work, is this for aligning the data that we get from our standards, like our health standards and science standards and such? Is that what this is aligning to?
No, this is more the actual data elements. So for example, every day a school district sends into currently it's the UTREC system, where they send in, here's the enrollment, the kid is enrolled at my school, here's the demographic information on that student. At the same time, you also have Cactus, which says, here's a teacher and their credentials behind it. And then you would have another area, for example, to finance, hey, this is the money that's flowing in. What this is doing is it's aligning those data elements to a standardized definition. So as you're talking about, the learning standards and the curriculum such as that is not a part of this component at all. That's more of the, again, those are the education standards that we have. Those aren't data elements that we're actually collecting through our systems. That's more of a, again, that's, what the board does is go out and say, okay, these are the standards and expectations that we want the teachers to work at. You guys go through and define the teaching, learning staff, then puts it together, after it gets approved by the board and goes out to the educators throughout the state. Does that make sense? How it kind of, it's different?
A little. I was just wondering because it says competencies, and so I was trying to figure out if that had to do with, and you said assessments, and so in order for them to assess certain things across the board to be able to fit into a data point like this, it would have to be assessing common standards, would it not?
Yeah, so for example, for the assessments, the assessments go through its own process of saying these are the standards, these are the reporting categories or the elements that we will be testing on. We get the results of the assessment. And so, for example, that competency is I passed the test, or I completed the let's say it's a science project, or I did whatever activity it was that shows competency. Competency inside of it, it's a newer element, but basically it goes through and says, when someone says it was a test, this is, hence it goes over into the competency would say that was a test, or if it says if this was an essay, or if this was a presentation, whatever, it just goes through and says, this is how you can read the data element and what it means. So if I see a 1, it means, it means something all the way across. Or if I see a 4, it means the same thing all the way through, all the way across, be it a test, be it an essay, be it, an oral presentation, what have you.
Okay, that makes more sense. And so this will eventually be one-to-one at some point, will it not?
When you say one-to-one,
Like it'll be embedded into their curriculum basically on a device so that as they do things, then they can pass that competency test instead of going to the teacher and saying, I'm ready to take the test, I've done it, and then it moves on. Well, is that kind of how the
yeah,
vision is eventually?
really the way the benefit behind this is, when you say one-to-one, so in charter school A, and according to their charter and whatever their approval is for the competency, it goes through and says, you are done, you complete, and this is how we have assessed that completion or that competency. Then it passes through the system, and as the child, for example, transfers over to, we'll say, a high school now in a local district, that information will transfer correctly and fully. So it doesn't say, well, we don't know what you did because our systems aren't talking to each other because there's no standard definition between the two.
Okay, thank you.
Jared, did you have a comment, Jared?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, Aaron's right. So what we're doing is we're aligning what our standards are to SEDS. So SEDS is just a data element standard. So you're doing kind of a crosswalk between what we currently use in our systems, like Utrecht's data standards, like school ID, things like that, and mapping that to a data standard that will be across the board. Chuma's on too, and he can kind of go into more depth on that.
So can I just make a comment, and then Chuma, you can fix me afterward? Okay. With that smile, you could fix us all. Okay. So Michelle, I'm thinking and that this is the collection at the state of uploaded data from school districts, and this is the storage tank that it's in. And is that a simple way to say this?
That's a great way to say it.
Thank you, Laura. You speak my language.
I do. Michelle, we're there, right there.
So I would put it this way: we have a storage tank, and then what's in the storage tank hasn't been. We don't have a common way of cataloging it, and then this right here is a way that we can take what's in the storage tank and identify. We can identify what those elements are to a standard. So we can take the things that are in there and we can say, okay, in the storage tank, these are our teachers. These are the elements of our teachers. And this right here just says what the elements of our teachers are. Hey, this is our assessment standards, and these are the assessments that we have. And then this aligns with, hey, this is what this assessment means. This is what that assessment means. This is what those results mean. Hey, these are the facilities we know about. We have these facilities and they're in a non-standard form. This is standard for facilities. That's how this works here. So it gives you can go to this list here and see all the elements in there, and then you can go back to our tank and go, okay, this is what we have in our tank. That makes sense?
Perfect. Thank you so much. Okay, any other questions by committee members? Okay, then I would be seeking a motion. I'm not sure that anyone can see this chair, but maybe Michelle can.
Oh, I have it.
Okay.
Okay, I make motion that the committee recommend the board approve the implementation and use of specific data elements to ensure compliance for federal and state reporting.
Any more discussion? Seeing none, we'll go through a roll call vote. Member Bolter?
Yes.
Thank you. Chair Huntsman?
Yes.
Member Newell? Member Newell? Okay, maybe his phone is going wacko. And you, Sean? I hear something.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you, Sean.
Okay. Thanks.
All right, that passes. Thank you so much. Thank you, Eric, for the presentation. All right, we will move on to 1.8. It's an action item R277-113 LEA fiscal and auditing policies and amendment. Ben, it looks like maybe you're going to present on this one. So I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Ben Rasmussen, Director of Law and Professional Practices. We reviewed R277-113 with the committee for feedback last month extensively, and we've gone back and made a few more changes to that rule. The current draft for you to look at is draft 4. Just want to update you as to what we've done with the rule since this.
Wait a minute, Ben. Sarah, can you pull up that rule for us, please? Sarah will.
I just made Ben the presenter in case he wants to make edits. Ben, do you want to show the rule or would you rather me just show the PDF?
I'm just pulling it up right now.
Perfect.
Okay, can you see that there? Okay, so since last month's committee, we've done a few things. The first thing we've done is that we've changed some terminology throughout the rule. There was feedback that the term management wasn't an appropriate term to use throughout the rule, and so if you look in the definitions, we've added a definition for administration, or expanded the definition of administration, and we've used administration as the term instead of management when talking about certain responsibilities throughout the rule. If you look in sections basically 5 through 8, there were a few things that were added based on feedback from the financial ops staff as well as the internal audit staff, and I won't go through all those unless you have questions, but those basically start on 282 and go through the second half of the rule. And then the other thing that we did was that we got some feedback more recently from Assistant Attorney General Michelle Buse asking us to update a little bit of the language and include a statute at the very beginning as an authorizing statute about charter schools filing certain reports. And so you'll see that the most recent changes based on her recommendations are in brown and orange. So we've got a little bit of a colorful rule for you to review, and hopefully Debbie Davis is on, and we'd be happy to answer any questions you have about this rule now.
Ben, is there any incorporation here from the session?
There was the addition of the requirement for GASB. I'm trying to remember where that was so I can show you.
Okay, that answer's good enough.
We did incorporate that into the rule.
Okay, and then I have another question. What does regularly mean?
Well, that's a good question. Debbie, do you have any input on that? Is there a specific line number you're looking at?
Well, you were on 283, I think, is where you were. I'm just curious. It was annually, and somebody's refreshing. Hold on. I think Ben is missing. So let's wait just a minute.
Can you hear me, Laura?
I can still hear you and see you, Ben.
Okay, I'm just I was a little surprised when she said I'm gone.
Laura's
okay. I was the one missing. I kept saying, "Oh, Ben's missing," but it was me.
Okay, that's early.
Sorry, I could see that someone was gone, and it was me.
Laura,
hey, Debbie,
you want me to jump in on that? So
I was just going to say before you do, Debbie, on that specific line, I think that came after we talked to the superintendents about this rule. They felt like that annually was kind of an unnecessary burden to put upon them to be reviewing the rule that frequently. They felt like putting regularly there would leave them some discretion and was something they would prefer there. But Debbie, what would you add?
So Debbie Davis, Chief Audit Executive for the board, and Ben is exactly correct. We changed it from annually to regularly at the request feedback from USBA, Terry Shoemaker, and they just indicated that sometimes with policies and procedures, it can take a lot of work to get a policy and procedure developed and implemented, sometimes months, sometimes a year. Right. So they were saying, wow, to go through that process and then potentially just a couple months later have to look at it again. They didn't want to go through that. So regularly, I think, and I'm going to look at what Kevin just sent me too. It's often enough to remain relevant, maybe, but obviously using that term, it does leave it up to discretion.
I think it also, in my mind, it also gives you opportunity to do more than annually if necessary.
Correct.
So I didn't mind it. I was just curious. Okay, Debbie or Ben, did you want to go over any other specific changes that have been put in?
This is Scott. I have some feedback that I'd like to share, or actually, it's both feedback and question, if I may. If we could go to, hang on a sec. If we could go to 11319D. Let's see, and
what line? It'd probably be easier.
Let's see. Yeah, 113. Hang on, let me look.
That doesn't, yeah.
So lines 88 through 91.
Let's look at those. Hang on. Yeah, so this is the feedback I'm getting. There's concern, I think, that well, here, let me just give you, like, you know, and Debbie, maybe you can answer this. So,
sure.
Because it appears it's the issue is whether an LEA is required to comply with the Green Book or COSO, or, you know, establish and maintain effective internal control. So, you know, as you pointed out earlier, you know, the uniform guidance on 200 or in 200.303 with internal control states the non-federal entity must establish and maintain effective internal control over the federal award that provides assurance that the non-federal entity is managing the federal award in compliance with federal statutes, regulations, and terms. So, and then it goes on to say these internal controls should be in compliance with guidance in the standards for internal controls of federal government. So this seems to be saying that they must or will or shall, you know, be in compliance. Can we, I mean, is it open to, you know, changing it so that we follow that mantra, so to speak, of should be in compliance as more of a business rule than a requirement? Does that make sense? Or I think they're, you know, I can see how they're interpreting that. It does look like we're, you know, mandating that, you know, that they be in compliance with these, you know, with the Yellow Book, with the Green Book, you know, when it's more of a should, right? Or what are your thoughts on that?
Debbie, before you answer, Scott, I'm not sure I like your question. I'll be interested in Debbie's answer. However, I'm not sure it should be a shall, because if they're taking federal money, they should be, not they may. Okay, Debbie, go ahead.
Okay, so Debbie here, and Scott is exactly correct, and he read the regulation in federal uniform guidance exactly as it is, and it does say you must have an effective internal controls, right? You must have it. And then it does say you should follow either Green Book standards for internal control in the federal government or COSO. There is a bit of a nuance there, and there is a difference, and putting it in the rule as we have would mandate that you have to follow the guidance in the Green Book or COSO. That said, it might be helpful to just understand, what does the Green Book say, what does COSO say, and it's not coming out and saying you have to have line by line all of these different policies and procedures. All it's saying is there are 5 components of internal control: the control environment, risk assessment, control activities, information and communication, monitoring. So as an LEA or even with the USBE, as we're establishing our internal control system to make sure we have effective internal controls, we should make sure that we have all of those components. That's all it's saying. It's not saying a laundry list of 200 control activities and you have to review this and that. So I think it's higher level. So I'm comfortable with having it in the rule being mandated, but I'm not the policymaker. I'm not making the decision on this. So that would be for the board to say, do we want to mandate it? Do we want it to be a must? Or should it be a should, which is just a best practice like it is in federal uniform guidance?
Okay, just to follow up, Debbie, so in clarity, or Scott, they must have a procedure or a process, and they should follow this one. Is that what it said?
So what it says is they must have an effective internal control system. They must. And best practice would be to follow Green Book or COSO. But that's just best practice. So they wouldn't have to follow Green Book or best practice or Green Book or COSO. It's just best practice.
Okay, so I actually, and the distinction is interesting here that they must have this, that they should follow the, I don't know that they're colliding.
So the difference is that's the nuance in federal uniform guidance. And then the difference with what is currently in rule is essentially that it's just a must. Like instead of should you follow as best practice, it's just you must follow. That's the difference in the rule and federal uniform guidance.
Okay, say that again, Debbie. So what we're having is they must have a uniform guidance policy or process, and then they should follow these.
So what our rule currently says is that you must maintain internal controls consistent with standards for internal control in the federal government, which is Green Book, or COSO. You must do that. So right now in rule, no should, it's just you must. But in comparison, in federal regulations, in federal uniform guidance, that's where it says you must have an internal control system, and it should, which means kind of optional as best practice, follow Green Book or COSO. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it does. I think that's what we're saying is, we're just recommending that we update the definition of the internal control to indicate that the Green Book or COSO may be adopted or be used as the best practice, right, Debbie? I mean, isn't that fair to say, or are you saying this? No, it's more extreme than that. Is we're saying you will adopt it.
Currently, we're saying you will adopt it. Yeah. If we wanted to change it so it's not maintained, because right now it's and maintain compliance with. So that's you must do this. Yeah. If we need to back off and have a should, we just need to reword that. So maybe instead of maintain, it's consider guidance.
Well, but Debbie, I'm asking you, I mean, how do you feel about that recommendation is to indicate that the Green Book or COSO may be adopted? But still have the must category or the must criteria, right? But then, I mean, what are your thoughts on that? Is that, suitable for you as an auditor, right? How are you feeling about that recommendation from the field?
Well, I think I can go either way on it, but honestly, as I said, we're talking about 5 components of internal control. It's the industry standard. And if you're not following COSO or Green Book, you're going to have to come up with something. So why recreate the wheel? Might as well do it anyway. But again, that's just my perspective. Again, the audit perspective, I just think why not do it? But I can understand why, should, must, going either way.
Right. Yeah, it's, and that's why, I wanted the finance committee members to hear your perspective, as our chief audit executive, right, on that recommendation. So,
One thing I'd point out, this is our definition we're talking about. The definition doesn't really tell you should or must. It just kind of tells you what internal controls are. As it's written, it talks about having policies that are designed to do something. The other thing that I would point out is Angie suggested that I point out that should or must are kind of the federal counterparts when we say shall or may. They're just kind of different speak for what we normally put on rule. What we would put in rule would be shall, may. Those are the kind of the terminology we would use. But we're talking about the definition here. We don't mandate shall or may or anything like that in the definition. It would be some other part of the rule.
Okay.
Board members, do you have any questions or on this specifically? Go ahead, Mark.
So I got looking at this the other day, and I tried to look at it in a lot of different scenarios. Large district, if I'm a small district, if I'm a charter school, okay, how will this apply to me? And I was challenged because and this is just how my brain works. I started on this with a time element, okay, scope of effort, compliance. The scope and effort's the doing piece of this, the compliance piece, and then through this I tried to figure out my resources. And while I was trying to navigate through draft 3, and then I've been in draft 4 here, but then I look at options and solutions if I'm an LEA, and some of them must and should and shalls had me hung up, but I found it, this is just me, I found it very difficult to put all of this into a place of, okay, if I was an LEA, I know exactly what I have to do and when. But as I was going through this, I was in the resource spot, and I went, holy cow, this is a lot of work. I'm not afraid of work, but I'm trying to define the work, and I found it a little bit confusing. And so I haven't dedicated a couple days to the task or even a day to it, but that was my concern. Rolling this out as I again wanted to put myself in the shoes of the LEA and walk through it. So I do have concerns, is what I'm saying. But I haven't vetted them all to be able to make changes to a rule.
So are we in a time crunch here to get this out, Scott? If not, I'm wondering if we shouldn't see if our rule writers can take a little more time. And I don't know if that is Ben or if that's just Angie.
No, I'll defer to Chief Audit Executive Davis on this too. I really think that, especially where we're in this situation, we may want to defer this to at least one more finance committee meeting where, at a future date, you'd have the opportunity for, members of the field to come up. But the input I got was from not entirely. I mean, there's a lot of input that's come in on this, but it's coming in through electronic channels, due to the situation. One being an external auditor provide that, input that I basically, regurgitated from them. So I think we could, due diligence wise and process wise, bring this back to committee at least one more time, to your point, to allow, but again, though, I really appreciate everything Chief Audit Executive Davis is doing, to get to what right is as far as the language, along with, and keeping in mind the concerns and statements that Chairman's been just. So I don't think we need to rush this any further, but, Debbie, will you let us know?
Sure.
Yeah.
So, okay, I think I'm on now. I don't think there is a rush on this. I think the idea is that we want to get it right. And I will say this is directed at financial and auditing. It's fairly technical, I guess. So it does take a little bit of time to process. I can say I haven't seen the feedback that Deputy Superintendent Jones is talking about, so I don't know the extent of it or the questions that are still being asked. So that would be interesting to take a look at. I will just reiterate that while it looks like there are a substantial number of changes to this rule, more of it is just a reorganization, a renumbering, a rewording for clarification. So to Chair Huntsman, I would say, I don't think there's that much new. There are that many new things that an LEA would have to do with this rule, even with the changes. I think they're already doing it. They're doing a great job. They're incredibly busy and taking care of things, and they're doing a good job. And this is just to provide clarification for them to answer questions. And so I think we take the time to get it right, but recognizing that it is a little bit technical and kind of written to our financial experts and our auditing experts, but we do want to get it right.
Right, and if I may, just to clarify, that input came to me yesterday, I believe. Yeah, I think it was yesterday. So it's not, Chief Audit Executive Davis, I'm not trying to derail this or sideswipe it. So back to you, Chair Belknap, I think it would be productive so that I can, my intent too is to loop Debbie in a conversation that I've been having with a couple of BAs so that we could meet electronically or telephonically with the BAs between now and the next time it's brought back to Chief Audit Executive Davis's point, the first she's hearing of it, but it was just brought up yesterday. So I think slow is smooth, smooth is fast. We're, really doing a great job of getting the feedback and the input and considerations along the lines of what Chair Huntsman spoke to. So I would recommend that we go ahead and try to bring it back again and allow some additional time for Debbie and I to get together. Over.
Go ahead, Chair.
So, I appreciate everyone's patience on this. When this comes out, there'll be also, I know people are doing a great job and they're doing a job, and in their mind they think they're doing a good job, but then as they get into this, the question is, do I have to do it differently? And as this rule rolls out, I see a similar parallel, but not to the full magnitude of school fees. But and it's getting close and better, but we've got to be able to stand behind it, and we should have it our very, very best work. It'd be terrible to roll it out and amend as we discover things. And so I appreciate the patience, the committee, if they give us another round, another meeting or whatever it takes to get it right. So thank you for that.
Okay, so without any objection, we'll move this to we'll send this back to leadership. I think it'll come back here, but that'll be their decision. But I would also like to just restate something that Debbie Davis said, that this is a technical rule and some of the information is very technical, and we need to keep it that way because of what it is. So anyway, without objection, any committee members, we'll move this to another meeting. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Debbie and Ben, for that. All right, so Ben, you have this next one too?
Yeah, so the next one.
I see you again. Okay,
so
I just need to announce this. We're on 1.9, R277483, the LEA reporting and accounting requirements repeal.
Okay, so this will be easy because that's just repealing that to follow 113. So we'll want to move that one out to May as well and just have that track R277113.
Okay, and we need to, there's no any problem with sunsetting it or anything. It's just on a repeal. Okay. Thank you, Ben. That was hard. Okay, we are on 1.10 action R27741419 pupil accounting. Ben, are you doing this one also?
Yes.
All right, we'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm just pulling this up on the screen. A couple things we've done here. The primary impetus for bringing R277-419 before the committee is what we've added here on lines 405 through 409. This is to help address how membership is calculated during our strange times right now. Basically, the requirement here is that the superintendent will calculate an average of membership from the last school year, July 1st, 2019 through March 13th, 2020, and that will be used for membership while school is during soft closure for the pandemic. The other thing that we've done in the rule is there were some recommendations from internal audit and from finance for some tweaks to terminology, that kind of thing. You'll see a lot of that starting in 416, where it's talking about agreed upon procedures, engagements. Debbie should be able to answer any questions you have about those changes. And then we've done the final thing we've done, and you want to be looking at draft 2, just so that you're clear, is that up in the authority and purpose section, the first section, Assistant Attorney General Buse also asked us to add the language on charter school reports to this rule as well. So you'll see that on lines 20 and 21. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you have or defer that to appropriate staff.
Any board members have questions? They might be getting off mute, but I do have a question on the pupil accounting for this time. I just want to be clear that it's the average rate, not numbers, because districts may have very different numbers, right?
Based on the average, LA's average rate of attendance, yes.
Okay, all right. So it shouldn't be, it should be fairly level for them rather than to be real discrepant. Is there such a word as that? Real discrepant. We'll pretend like there is. That it.
The chair, you can make up words that
I make up
in the education community.
Usually it's not in a public meeting, okay? Anyway, so that there won't be that much discrepancy between their rate the year before, because we're not dealing with exact numbers of students, we're dealing with the rate. I just wanted to point that out. Okay, committee members, any questions? See none, I'm looking for a motion.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. This is
Sean.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
I move that we accept the changes to Rule R277-419, the pupil accounting on lines.
Two.
Excuse me?
Draft 2.
Oh, draft 2. Lines 405 through 409, and lines 20 through 21, and lines.
You just specify 16. Draft 2, Sean.
Oh, draft 2.
You don't need to specify the line numbers.
Oh, okay. In draft 2.
On send to the full board on second and final reading.
To send to the full board on second and final reading.
Okay, committee members, any discussion to that motion? Okay, seeing none, we'll do a roll call vote. Member Bolter?
Yes.
Chair Huntsman?
Yes.
Member Newell?
Yes.
Thank you for making the motion. All right, that passes unanimously, so thank you.
I will say aye.
Are you there? Hi.
Yeah.
I'll add you to my end of my list here. Thank you, Member Nelson. Okay. All right, we will move on to item 1.11, the final action on state special education amount owed to AISU. And Scott, are you doing this one?
Yeah, sorry, it takes a second for the camera and the,
I
okay.
know, and sometimes it takes like 10 pushes.
Right, so just as background on this particular agenda item, Finance Committee members will recall that the board made a motion to fence a particular amount of funding or funds in the state charter school board budget of the overall USBE budget in order to ensure that we meet the financial obligations related to the findings of the special education, both federal and state monitoring that took place quite a while ago. Since then, and a key part of that motion, though, was subject to continuing efforts by both SCSB and USBE staff to work on, including our AAGs, to work on gathering, or if you will, funding along the settlement lines and, by way of the closure process that AISU went through. So we've reached a particular point right now. Now, there is still ongoing efforts with the LLC AIS to recover, and Brian can jump in here and correct me if I'm wrong, approximately $25,000 from them. But we've pretty much satisfied, or not pretty much, we have satisfied the federal amount owed. We paid that several months ago. And now we're, subject to this last bit, if you will, of collection from the AIS LLC of the $25,000. We're approximately around $125,000 that is still owed in state special education funding. So if we, so this is why we brought this particular item to the Finance Committee, so that we could look to see if possibly the Finance Committee would make a motion for the full board to consider amending. I'm not sure if that's the right word, amending the original motion, to the point that we're at now with the $125,000 owed. Does that make sense, Chair and Chair Belknap and members of the Finance Committee?
It does, and the recommended action is pulled up, and I know we'll probably have some discussion on this, but I do want to ask one question before I open it to committee. What has happened to the vans and the buses? I know they weren't worth much, but what has happened?
So pretty much we only were able to sell one bus. The vans we had no takers on, and the other bus, so they're pretty much just scrap now. They're not. We wouldn't even get any portion or even if they're turned into scrap. So it was just one bus that was sold to help go towards the overall amount that was owed. The remainder of them.
Where are they now?
We have no buyers. They're in the surplus yard through through the state surplus system.
So this will sound, but is there any way to pilfer some things off the buses to support other buses?
Yeah, there is, but it's
not money for money, but just
so that would all be handled within those lanes. That there's other entities that might come in and use pieces and parts from them, but that's all worked out between what amounts to state surplus and those particular entities without any kind of oversight on our part. I mean, it's the right way, it's the proper way, right? But we don't track or do anything. But
okay.
You're right. It could be. And that's, and maybe scrap is too harsh of a word, but they are available for, individuals to come in and take part.
Can the vans be donated for, and I know I'm not really talking about money, but I think you can donate them to different places and get like $50 or something, but you donate them to a foundation.
Yes, ma'am. But my understanding is they were so, more
usable.
I'm not sure if I'd go as far as to say completely unusable, but I'm not sure we'd want to donate, or state surplus would want to donate because of the potential liability.
Okay.
All right. Of that. I mean, they were just not viable products for anybody to buy. The one bus was obviously, right, and so and that's where we stood with those particular assets.
All right, thank you. Okay, board members, you can see the action up here. Does anyone have something they'd like to talk about here? Chair Huntsman?
Well, I've been doing a lot of talking, but if somebody else wants to get in the queue, I certainly wouldn't mind hearing from them. I understand the situation here, but if I remember right, the previous motion actually, what it did is it encumbered $400 and something thousand. I guess we took a reserve against the state charter board line item, and I think it had something to do with school closures. I don't have all the details on that, and so those funds have been basically locked up and couldn't be used for other purposes, pending everything that was happening with AISU. And so I'm at, I have a motion that isn't this motion that I wouldn't mind proposing at this time.
Chair, do you want to see if anyone else has any comments first before you make your motion? Thank you.
Hey, ma'am.
Yes.
Scott, may I, I believe that the AAGs, I think Michelle might have the original motion. Would it benefit the group to hear the exact wording of that original motion, or do you just want to move forward at this point?
Was that for encumbering the funds?
Yes, to Chair Huntsman's point. Yeah, and then also the added emphasis, pending further actions by SCSB and USBE staff, which we've done, right? We've and to the point that we're still waiting for further information from AIS, the LLC, for the $25,000 as part of the settlement. So, I'm just asking, would it benefit the Finance Committee members to hear verbatim what that original motion from the board was?
I don't think it ever can hurt, and I made that motion, so I remember that it also included that whatever we needed. But Michelle, do you have that available, that you would have that ability to read that for us?
Chair,
yes, I do, if you want me to read that for you.
You or Brian? Brian's on there too.
No, go ahead, Michelle. Go ahead.
Okay. The motion was that the board approve the setting aside of $425,689.28 from the state charter school board budget in order to meet the required amounts due to the federal and state government from American International Schools of Utah, and that the board approve the payment of both debts on August 31st, 2019, unless the state charter school board and or USBE staff provide appropriate and allowable funds to meet the obligations by that date.
Well, we've already blown that date, haven't we?
Yes, so yes, that's correct. Although we did eventually, to my earlier point, meet the federal obligation, and now we're in a position of just being around $125,000 short of meeting the state obligation. So this is why we're bringing this back, is we want to do as much closure as we can. We understand we missed that August 2019 direction, but as you know, and other Finance Committee members know, it was a developing process, an evolving one. First time, we've experienced such a degree of process necessity along that line of, making sure that we're fiduciarily responsible in paying that funding back. So anyway, we're with that, and I appreciate Michelle having that at hand to read that back. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else on the committee have questions or comments they'd like to make? All right, then I'm just making sure they're not trying to get off mute, Chair.
Okay, you're fine. No, I'm
okay.
I can turn mine off. So the challenge that I see right now, and of course we're dealing with a lot of firsts. It's been quite a few years of dealing with a lot of firsts, is there's still a little bit of unknown. I think it's only $25,000 that is at risk or something. It's not going to take care of the whole thing. but there's a couple significant things that will happen if we just keep moving forward and say, okay, we're going to take that balance. We're going to move that balance from the state charter board line item. I can't remember what it was called. And just settle this out. So it'd take 125,000 or whatever that exact number is, and take from their account. And as we know, that between their AAGs and the charter board itself, they're not too excited about that. They say, well, that's our money, not yours to take. And so as we go about doing that, we're going to have even more conversations, whether we can legally do that. And of course, our AAGs, and then we said, we can. But I would like to think that there's got to be a better way. And then so if we choose not to take it from that account, then what account do we take it to settle on? And I would like to at least have another opportunity for the state charter board to say, okay, how do you feel we should remedy this? And so what I was wanting to do in this meeting and take to the full board is to make a motion that 400 and whatever that was, that number that AG you said be reduced down, so we only encumber 125,000, and then we go to the state charter board and say we're down to 125, and attempt to kind of get a reconciliation of have them say to us how we should settle that.
So, Chair Huntsman, can you put that into motion verbiage?
Yes, if can I get that? I didn't write it down fast enough when AG Buse.
425,800, and I've missed that other part in 28 cents. 800 what?
I didn't get the.
No, Michelle.
I got.
Here she comes.
Just 1 second. It takes me a minute to unmute my computer. It's 689,028 cents.
So say the whole thing again. So Chair Huntsman gets it all.
The whole amount is $425,689.28.
Thank you. So my motion is that we unencumber that $425,689.28, reduce that encumbered amount to $125,000, and go to the state charter board and ask them for a recommendation of how to settle that $125,000.
Do I have discussion to that motion? Seeing none, we'll do a roll call vote. Board Member Bolter?
Yes.
Chair Huntsman?
Yes.
Member Newell?
Yes.
Member Nelson?
Aye.
Thank you. That's unanimous. Thank you. Scott, do you have marching orders now? From that, well, I guess it's got to go to the full board first.
Yeah, we're clear, ma'am.
Okay, we will go on to 1.12. It's an action item. It's the state fiscal year 2021 budget review and approval. Scott, we'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, so I recommend that we defer this particular agenda item until at least the next finance committee meeting to allow sufficient time for us to see the results of what we know is going on right now in parallel to your meetings is the legislative special session. And even then, it may be as far as into June, into the June special session, you know, where we get clarity on the future of funding for state fiscal year 21. You know, you may ask, well, then, you know, how do you set, you know, parameters or things for at least the July allotment? We would follow the joint resolution that the legislature passed, which is to basically say, you know, be fiduciarily responsible and act, you know, or gauge, if you will, the or apply where you were at with your state fiscal year 20 budgets, you know, for the July allotments. Now we need to develop that even further, because this doesn't only affect, you know, this particular agenda item is specific to the board's internal office budget, where we set the budget, you know, going forward. Well, no, it's not only specific. It does have the minimum school program, but until we get the details out, and we've pretty much recommended the same to the LEAs, you know, is to delay or, you know, wait. You know, as you know, they're highly interested in, you know, what they should do with their negotiations. You know, we just need a little bit more time to see where we're at from this special session, and, you know, before we start going down this road of actually setting solid budgets. Because as Deborah briefed you on earlier, and you know, I don't anticipate these bills won't pass, but that money that they swept, for, just as an example, from the carry forward, needs to come back to us officially. Then we need to go in and reset everything, and then provide you with that, you know, baseline budget package, if you will, and, you know, adhering or you know, following the joint resolution as well, so that at least for the July allotments, and then for internally with us, we're all on the same page as far as where we're at with that July budget, and then also pending the special session that I'm anticipating will happen by the legislature in June. So in short, we're just recommending that we push this particular agenda item into the next.
That wasn't in short, Scott. That was long. Okay.
Well, it's in
All
short
right.
now.
So I do have one question. So are we, along with districts, working off a base budget and that includes the growth? Is that correct?
Right. So
Now?
well, yeah. For right now, we're working off the HB1 that passed, the House Bill 1 base budget bill that passed in the 2020 general session, which, to your point, did include the 50 million for growth. So that's where we're at right now. There's a lot of other questions that we need to get answered. You know, there was a meeting that Patrick, Deborah, Jake, Haltra, our staff was with Ben, that I wasn't able to attend because I was in our board meeting yesterday. I need to get back with them on Ben's recommendations, Ben Leschman, the LFA, right, on how to proceed, you know, subject to everything that's happening in the session today. So.
Okay, thank you. Without any objection, we'll move that to another date and send that back to leadership. I do have a question. Angie is on. I'm wondering, Angie, I'm kind of putting you on the spot, so because maybe you're preparing for your other meeting, but is there any update from the House meeting this morning or yesterday for us?
I apologize. Thank you. As I was unmuting, the audio just completely cut out. So what I think you asked was if I had an update on the special session. Is that correct, Board Member Belmont?
Either from yesterday or today. Either from today or yesterday.
Sure. Okay. Yes, I'd be happy to do that. And I know that Jeff Van Hulten is planning to send an email shortly to the full board, but yes, I'd be happy to give you an update. So yesterday, so we've been tracking 3 bills, as was mentioned a moment ago. Scott mentioned SB 3001, which impacts our current year funding and some carry forward amounts. We've got SB 3005 that had all of the elements of waiving the statewide assessments, educator evaluations, the basic civics tests, et cetera, and then HJR 301, which directs how agencies and LEAs should be using their, or be fiscally frugal, I'll say it that way. So all three have passed, both the House and the Senate now. The House has one bill left, it looks like, but both SB 3001 and SB 3005 passed this morning. When Representative Snow presented our education bill related to assessments, there were no questions, so it passed very easily. So things are looking good. And that's the update I have for now. Same in the Senate, there were no questions related to our recommended bill. So we're just grateful the legislature did that. I think it'll give a lot of, have a lot of our LEAs feel calm now about those issues. So
it's pretty exciting that they're listening, and the amount of time that our staff and board members have spent on looking at changes needed. So I appreciate that. And then we'll just wait for others. Did they set another date to meet?
Not that I've heard yet. That's a good thing. They may have, they'll probably say something at the end. Usually they kind of give a summary before they recess. Just a moment ago, as I was listening, I've been listening this morning, kind of simultaneously listening to this meeting and that one. They were still on that last bill. So I'll see if I can listen. And if they say something, I'll let Jeff know, or maybe Jeff can listen and he can update you.
That's great. Thank you so much, Angie. Nice.
And just one other thing, the Senate will be still in session this afternoon at 2:00 because there were some amendments made over in the House. So the Senate will concur on those. Okay. So, yep, it's good to see you.
Okay. Thank you, Angie. Okay. Committee members or staff, is there anything else we need to bring up today? Thank you, Sarah, for running this. Thank you, everybody, for coming today. I so appreciate your time, your effort, and it's not easy. Oh, there's Miss Sarah. Hi. Nice to see you instead of a piece of paper.
Why, thank you.
Anybody else? All right. We are so efficient. I meant it yesterday when I said it. I appreciate our committee members taking time to be well prepared and well read when you come. So thank you. Have a good day. And maybe you might be joining some of the other meetings today. So thank you, Scott.
Thanks a lot, Laura.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Jerry, I'm assuming because I wasn't the host that you were recording.
Yep, I was